It begins like any other morning. The world never announces the moment it changes. It simply shifts beneath everyone's feet. At 6:17 a.m. Eastern Time, the first fragments of information surface online, small, trembling ripples that hint at something massive beneath the waterline. A sudden flash picked up over Eastern Europe, unusual satellite readings, a heat signature too large to dismiss. The kind of data analysts hope is a glitch, but secretly know is not. Within minutes, social media fills with fractured reactions, confusion, jokes, panic disguised as sarcasm. Newsrooms stall between the temptation to speculate and the danger of being wrong. And then, one after another, the confirmations begin to solidify into a single horrifying truth. A missile launch, real, intentional. The first documented strikes of what will soon be known as a global war. Across the United States, the reaction is not immediate chaos, not yet. It's disbelief, quiet, heavy, disorienting disbelief. Phones buzz on nightstands. Early risers squint at headlines that shift from unverified explosion to NATO response initiated. No sirens, no explosions on American soil, just notifications. Lines of text that feel too unreal to process. The markets haven't opened. Airports continue boarding passengers for business trips and weekend getaways. Coffee brews. Showers run. The soundtrack of a normal morning continues playing over the first tremors of something immense and irreversible. But beneath all of it, something invisible begins to move. At 6:45 a.m., every phone along the East Coast lights up at once. A nationwide alert. The message is brutally direct. National defense condition elevated. Remain indoors. Await instruction. Most citizens have never seen a DEFCON alert in their lives. To some, it looks like a glitch. To others, a hacker prank. But the sound, the piercing, metallic tone of an official emergency broadcast is enough to freeze conversations and still entire rooms. In the major cities, old Cold War protocols buried in dusty binders are activated for the first time in decades. Law enforcement deploys to pre-designated control points. Subways grind to a halt between stations. Airspace over Washington, New York, and Boston is cleared within minutes. Flights preparing for transatlantic departure are rolled back to their gates without explanation. Still, there are no explosions, no sirens, just information, conflicting and terrifying. Television networks abandon all scheduled programming. Anchors read from teleprompters with voices that tremble behind professional masks. Government officials appear on screen urging calm, yet their eyes betray a fear deeper than their words allow. Their faces say it plainly, even if their statements do not. This is not a drill. By sunrise, millions of Americans step outside to the same sky they've known their entire lives, yet it feels different. The air itself vibrates with uncertainty. People look upward without knowing why, instinct searching for danger it cannot yet see. By 8 a.m., the country is awake, not under attack, but no longer at peace. A new global chapter has opened, and the United States has crossed a threshold it cannot step back from. By mid-morning, the routines that define daily life begin to crumble. Communications remain intact for now, but information has transformed into both salvation and poison. Television anchors speak in low, deliberate tones, the heavy kind reserved for moments when the world is shifting in ways too large to comprehend. Every emergency broadcast repeats the same warning: remain indoors. Do not travel unless instructed. Across Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, and dozens of other cities, people flood into supermarkets. What begins as precaution turns to desperation. Shelves normally full of bottled water, canned food, medicine, and batteries are stripped bare within an hour. At gas stations, lines wrap around entire blocks. Engines idle, tempers flare, strangers argue over fuel, space, and rumors. Anxiety spreads faster than any official update can counter. The government's strategy is clear: keep the public informed but not terrified. Maintain order. Reposition military assets quietly behind the scenes. But the silence, the lack of visible attacks, creates its own kind of panic. People fear what they cannot see. By 10 a.m., misinformation explodes. False reports of missile impacts in Los Angeles trend online. Deepfake videos circulate showing non-existent attacks in Houston. Clips of streaks of light in the sky, some real, many fake, go viral. Reality becomes a blurred concept. Americans glued to their screens no longer know what to trust. In Washington, the White House stands behind new layers of barricades. Helicopters circle constantly. Military convoys rumble south toward undisclosed locations. In New York, Wall Street halts trading after the third circuit breaker triggers. Markets don't crash, they simply freeze. Across the Midwest, power grids begin to flicker, not from enemy attack, but from overwhelming demand. Millions charge every battery they can find, phones, radios, power banks, trying to prepare for a future they still don't fully understand. By noon, schools across the nation close. Parents flood the roads in a mass, instinctive retreat. Interstates choke not because of evacuation orders, but because fear has its own gravitational pull. In just 6 hours, America experiences the first paradox of modern warfare. The battlefield has not reached the nation, but the war has already begun. Information is the first weapon. Uncertainty is the first wound. At 1:17 p.m., the world goes quiet, not because something has exploded, but because something has stopped. The silence is unnatural, heavy, humming beneath the surface like the moment before a lightning strike. For hours, officials warned of possible cyber disruptions, using vague terminology that meant little to most people. No one truly understood what that kind of attack could look like, until it happened. It begins subtly. An ATM freezes mid-withdrawal, swallowing a card. A debit machine at a grocery store declines every purchase. News websites fail to load, then reload with errors, then stop completely. Within minutes, a digital chain reaction spreads across the country. The internet slows, then stutters, then collapses in chunks, city by city, region by region. Online banking disappears first. Government portals follow. Streaming platforms, news feeds, search engines, everything blinks offline. Social media feeds refresh into emptiness. Timelines gone like erased chalk. It's not a total blackout, not yet, but a patchwork shutdown spreading like a virus with no cure. Each outage triggers panic that leaps from household to household, street to street, a silent contagion fueled by imagination. In cities, stores cannot process payments. Even cash registers connected to cloud systems freeze. Clerks can't open drawers. Managers can't override locks. People stand in aisles full of food they suddenly cannot buy. In rural areas, cell towers fail one after another. Communities become islands. Emergency radio stations become the last thin threads connecting millions of people to a world beyond their front door. A calm, nearly emotionless voice echoes through static. This is a national broadcast. Please remain calm. Federal authorities are responding. The recording repeats every 5 minutes, a mantra meant to steady a nation on the edge. But the tone, the flatness, the pauses, only deepens the dread of those listening. By 2 p.m., hospitals initiate disaster plans. Backup generators thrum to life. Ventilators, monitors, and cooling systems become dependent on their last reserves of diesel. Ambulances line up in parking lots, conserving every drop of fuel. Doctors print patient records on aging copiers. Terrified digital files may vanish forever. Families gather outside hospital entrances, hoping for updates that can no longer be delivered electronically. Nurses write instructions by hand and tape papers to walls. At home, millions stare at motionless Wi-Fi routers, willing them back to life. Parents dig through closets for old flashlights. Children sit on the floor watching adults, usually confident, move with frantic uncertainty. Neighbors who barely nodded at one another days ago now talk face-to-face across driveways. Human voices become the first network to survive the blackout. The outage doesn't destroy infrastructure, it destroys confidence. It disconnects people from everything they rely on. And in that silence, an older instinct awakens. Without information, people imagine the worst. Without connection, they feel truly alone. For the first time in decades, the United States feels isolated, not as a nation, but as millions of individuals suddenly aware of how fragile their digital lifelines really are. By mid-afternoon, an undeniable truth settles over the country. In modern war, the first casualties are not cities or soldiers, but certainty, connection, and trust. Nightfall. Fear, light, and the unknown. By 6 p.m., the sun dips beneath a horizon most Americans no longer see. They're too busy looking inward, into darkened living rooms, across quiet streets, at powerless devices that once defined their lives. For the first time in generations, night arrives without the glow of a nation. No street lamps flicker on. No neon signs hum. Entire skylines vanish into darkness. Power outages that began as isolated failures now smother the entire East Coast like a rolling shadow. In the few pockets of light that remain, candles flicker in windows. Flashlights beam weakly through blinds. Emergency beacons pulse like distant stars. Major cities enforce curfews. Police cars move slowly through empty downtown streets, loudspeakers echoing, "Return home, stay indoors, remain calm." Even officers delivering the message feel its hollowness. They've never trained for something like this. In suburban neighborhoods, families gather around battery-powered radios, the only surviving connection to the outside world. The broadcasts are distorted, barely audible over static. Some updates are clearly hours old, others sound pre-recorded. Somewhere in the background of the static, a voice instructs listeners to boil water, though no one explains why. It may be a contamination risk, or it may be a mistake from another region. No one knows. Fear has shifted shape. It's no longer fear of an incoming missile or foreign invasion. It's the fear of not knowing, the fear of an invisible battle unfolding in silence. At 8:30 p.m., rumors spread of distant explosions off the Atlantic coast. Some hear that a naval clash has occurred, others claim submarines have surfaced. No one can verify anything. Cars that fled hours earlier now sit motionless on highways, forming long chains of vehicles turned into makeshift shelters. People sleep in their seats, windows cracked, engines off. Above them, the sky, usually dominated by the red blinking lights of aircraft, is strangely empty, except for the occasional streak of light. A satellite? A jet? Something else? No one can say. Inside quiet homes, people rediscover forgotten rituals. Writing notes by hand, whispering prayers, listening to the world breathe. Some neighbors share the warmth of generators and food. Others barricade their doors and windows. The nation begins to fracture along unseen lines. Fear always creates new borders, and yet pockets of resilience bloom in the darkness. Churches open their doors through the night, offering blankets and warm meals. Volunteers gather medical supplies. Amateur radio operators, once written off as hobbyists, become vital links in a collapsing communication chain, relaying information from town to town. In the absence of electricity, screens, and noise, Americans discover a fragile, improvised unity, born not of strength, but of shared vulnerability. By 10 p.m., the blackout stretches from one coast to the other. The entire nation lies in darkness, still standing but disconnected from itself. The first day of World War III ends not with fire, nor with the fall of a city, but with a silence so deep it feels like the world is holding its breath. The war has yet to reach every doorstep, but its shadow now lives in the mind of every American. And so, as midnight approaches, the nation sits suspended between yesterday's world and whatever tomorrow is becoming. The darkness outside isn't just the absence of power, it's the presence of a new reality settling over every home. There are no sirens, no blasts, no visible enemy in the streets, only silence. Thick, heavy, alive. Parents lie awake listening for sounds that never come. Children sleep beside flashlights clutched like lifelines. Neighbors glance through windows, unsure whether to trust the quiet or fear it. Somewhere far beyond the blackout, the war is moving, shifting pieces on a board no one can see. And though the first day ends without a single American city burning, everyone knows the truth. This was only the warning. Tomorrow will not be kinder. Tomorrow will not be calmer. Tomorrow, the world will show what it truly intends. The first day ends with fear. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers, "This is only the beginning."